After discovering that my husband had been sleeping with my best friend for months, he tried to convince me that it was just a mistake. But I chose my dignity and walked away without regret. I found out on a Tuesday. Isn't that pathetic? Not even a dramatic Friday or a soul-crushing Monday, just a boring, ordinary Tuesday that ripped my entire world apart. I was supposed to be at my book club. Sarah had texted me that morning saying she felt sick and couldn't make it. My best friend since college, the woman who'd been my maid of honor, who'd held my hand through 3 miscarriages, who knew every secret I'd ever whispered in the dark. The book club got cancelled last minute, so I drove home early. I remember being excited. Maybe Mark and I could finally have that conversation we'd been putting off about trying for another baby. Maybe we could order takeout and watch something mindless on Netflix. Maybe I could salvage something good from this disappointing day. I pulled into our driveway and saw Sarah's car. My first thought was relief. She must be feeling better. Maybe she'd come over to check on me, worried I'd be upset about book club. That's what best friends do, right? I walked through the front door calling out their names. Mark, Sarah. I'm home early. The silence that followed wasn't normal. It was thick, guilty, suffocating. Then I heard it. A sound that will haunt me until the day my husband's voice, breathless and urgent, coming from our bedroom. Did hear something. I stood frozen in my own hallway like an intruder. My legs felt like concrete. My heart hammered so loud I was sure they could hear it upstairs. Sarah's voice, panicked and whispered. She's not supposed to be home yet. The woman I'd trusted with everything. The woman I'd called crying at 2 a.m. when the pregnancy tests came back negative month after month. The woman who'd helped me pick out lingerie to surprise my husband on our anniversary. I should have left. I should have walked right back out that door, and never looked back. Instead, I climbed those stairs like I was walking to my own. The bedroom door was cracked open. Through that tiny sliver, I saw my entire marriage dissolve. My husband of 8 years, the man who'd promised to love only me, was tangled with my best friend in the bed where I'd cried to sleep countless nights, wondering why he seemed so distant lately. I didn't scream. I didn't throw things. I just stood there watching my implode, feeling like I was having an out-of-body experience. They scrambled apart when they finally noticed me. Sarah grabbed her clothes, her face red with shame and panic. Mark sat, and I'll never forget the look on his face. Not guilt. Not remorse. Annoyance. He was annoyed that I'd caught them. Jen, this isn't what it looks like, he said, and I almost laughed at how pathetic and cliché it was. Sarah couldn't even look at me. She mumbled something about being sorry and rushed past me. Her clothes clutched to her chest. I heard the front door slam moments later. Then it was just Mark and me staring at each other across the ruins of everything I'd believed in. How long, I asked. My voice sounded strange, like it was coming from someone else. It didn't mean anything, he said, pulling on his boxers. Jen, have to believe me, it was just physical. I love. How long? He looked away. A few months. But it's over now. I promise it's over. A few months. While I'd been blaming for the distance between us. While I'd been wondering if I was boring, if I wasn't pretty enough anymore, if I'd done something wrong. While I'd been researching fertility treatments and planning romantic dinners and buying new perfume, hoping to recapture whatever spark we'd lost. Why? The word came out as barely a whisper. He started talking then, making excuses, saying how stressed he'd been at work, how we'd grown apart, how Sarah had been going through a hard time with her divorce and needed comfort. He made it sound like he was some kind of hero, swooping in to save my broken best friend. I listened to him minimize and justify and blame everyone but himself, and something inside me just shut down. The part of me that had loved him unconditionally, that had built my entire identity around being his wife, that had forgiven his small cruelties and overlooked his selfishness for 8 years. That part of me died right there on that Tuesday afternoon. I want out, I said. Jen, please. Let's talk about this. We can work through this. I'll go to counseling. I'll do whatever it takes. I want out of this house tonight. He kept talking, kept pleading, but I wasn't listening anymore. I walked downstairs and called my sister. Then I called a locksmith. Then I opened a bottle of and sat on my couch, staring at our wedding photos on the mantel. The man in those pictures looked so happy, so devoted. Had he been lying even then? Had he ever really loved me, or had I just been convenient? Mark packed a bag and left around midnight, still trying to convince me this was all some big misunderstanding. That it was just, and didn't change how he felt about me. As if that made it better. As if reducing our marriage to a technicality was supposed to comfort me. I sat alone in our house until dawn, thinking about all the signs I'd missed. The late nights at the office. The phone calls he'd taken another room. The way he'd started criticizing little things about me. The way he'd pull away when I tried to touch him. Sarah had been there for all of it. Listening to me cry about how distant Mark had become. Offering advice on how to reconnect with him. All while she was sleeping with him behind my back. I thought about the girls' trip we'd planned for next month. The baby shower I was supposed to throw for her sister. The 1,000 little ways our lives were intertwined, all now poisoned by this betrayal. By morning, I knew what I had to do. I couldn't stay married to a man who thought so little of me. I couldn't pretend to forgive betrayal this deep, this calculated, this cruel. I couldn't live with the knowledge that my husband had chosen someone else while I was desperately trying to save our marriage. But knowing what I have to do and actually doing it are two different things. The hardest part wasn't losing Mark. By that Tuesday morning, I realized I'd lost him months ago and just hadn't been told. The hardest part was losing the version of who had believed in forever. I filed for divorce on Thursday, 2 days after I caught them. 2 days of Mark blowing my phone with increasingly desperate messages. We're overreacting. Sarah means nothing to me. Don't throw away 8 years over one mistake, as if months of planning secret meetings was just an oops moment. The lawyer's office felt surreal. I sat across from this stranger explaining the most intimate details of my marriage's collapse. She was kind but clinical, asking about assets and timelines like she was discussing the weather. "Do you have evidence of the affair?" she asked. I laughed, and it came out bitter and sharp. I walked in on them. Any photos, text messages, documentation? I hadn't thought to take pictures. I'd been too destroyed to think like a detective. No, but I saw it with my own eyes. She nodded and made notes. Husband will likely deny it if there's no proof. He might claim misunderstood what saw. The idea that Mark would gaslight me about something I witnessed firsthand should have shocked me. Instead, it felt inevitable. Of course he would lie. He'd been lying for months. I drove home to find him sitting on my front porch. Our front porch, I kept forgetting it wasn't ours anymore. "The locks," he said, holding his old key. "Changed them yesterday." "Jen, this is insane. Can't just lock me out of my own house. Watch me." He followed me to the door, talking the entire time. Same script as Tuesday night. It didn't mean anything. He was sorry. We could work through this. Couples survived infidelity all the time. Did love her? I asked as I turned the key. He hesitated. That hesitation told me everything. "Answer me, Mark. It's complicated." I turned around and looked at him. Really looked at him. When had his face become so unfamiliar? When had this man I'd shared a bed with for 8 years become a stranger? "It's not complicated. Either loved her or didn't." "I loved Jen, I married." "Bye?" "That's not what I asked." Another hesitation, longer this time. "I care about Sarah, but..." I held my hand. "Stop." I went inside and locked the door behind me. He stood on the porch for 20 minutes, alternating between knocking and pleading and to call his lawyer. Let him call his lawyer. Let him try to explain to a judge why he deserved half of everything after cheating with my best friend. The hardest part wasn't Mark's desperation. It was everyone else's reactions. My mother called that evening. Somehow she'd already heard. Small towns are like that. "Honey, I know, but don't think divorce is a bit extreme. Marriage takes work. Father and I went through rough patches too." "Did dad sleep with best friend?" Silence. "Mom, did husband cheat on with someone trusted completely?" "That's different, but..." "No, it's not different. It's exactly the same conversation, and if can't support me leaving a cheating husband, then I don't want to have it." I hung on my own mother. Mark's family was worse. His sister Emma called the next day crying. "Jen, please don't do this. Mark made a mistake, but he loves so much. Guys are perfect together. Can get through this. Perfect couples don't cheat, Emma. Everyone makes mistakes." Or being so harsh. Think about what I was throwing away. As if I was the one who destroyed our marriage. I didn't throw anything away. Mark did when he decided Sarah was worth more than our vows. "Really? Can't try counseling first?" I'd heard some version of this conversation a dozen times already. Everyone wanted me to try harder, forgive faster, think about Mark's feelings. No one seemed to care that I was dying inside. The worst call came from Sarah. I almost didn't answer. Her name on my phone felt like a physical, but I needed to hear what she had to say. I needed to understand how someone I'd trusted completely could betray me so thoroughly. "Jen," her voice was small, tentative. "What do you want, Sarah?" "I need to explain." "Explain what?" "How I've been screwing my husband for months while pretending to be my friend. It just happened. We never meant for it to go so far." "How did it start?" She was quiet for so long I thought she'd hung. "That night we're sick with food. Remember? Asked Mark to drive me home from dinner because my car was in the shop." I remembered. 3 months ago. I'd been throwing all night and didn't want Mark to leave me, but Sarah lived across town and it was late. I'd practically forced him to drive her home. We got to talking in the car about marriage problems, she continued. "What marriage problems?" "No. How guys had been distant. How he felt like didn't appreciate him anymore. How'd been so focused on getting pregnant that stopped seeing him as anything but a donor." Each word was a. She'd taken my private frustrations, my vulnerable moments, and used them as ammunition to steal my husband. So decided to comfort him. It wasn't like that, we just talked. But there was this connection, this understanding. He felt so alone in marriage, Jen. He needed someone who really saw him. And that someone was my best friend. I never wanted to pine, but did it anyway. Tried to stop. So many times we said it was over. But what? But we fell in love. Those 4 words hit me like a physical. I doubled over, gasping. "Jen, are there?" I hung in my phone across the room. Love, they fell in love. This wasn't just physical. This wasn't just a moment of weakness or a mistake. They had built something together while systematically destroying everything I believed in. All those late nights I'd spent crying to Sarah about how distant Mark had become. She'd known exactly why he was pulling away. She'd been the reason. All those times she'd encouraged me to be patient, to try harder, to give him space. She'd been protecting their relationship at the expense of mine. I'd been living in a lie for months, surrounded by people who knew the truth and chose to let me suffer in ignorance. The betrayal wasn't just about. It was about the conspiracy. The careful orchestration of my humiliation. The way they turned my trust into a weapon against me. I spent that weekend going through old text messages, looking for clues I'd missed. Sarah asking about Mark's work schedule. Mark mentioning he'd run into Sarah at lunch. Innocent exchanges that now felt loaded with hidden meaning. How many people knew? How many mutual friends had watched me make a fool of, talking about my marriage problems while everyone knew exactly why those problems existed? Monday morning, I drove to Sarah's house. I needed my things back. Books I'd lent her. A necklace I'd forgotten there. The spare key to my house I'd given her years ago. She opened the door looking like she hadn't slept. "Good. I want my stuff back. Jen, can we please talk?" "There's nothing to talk about." Made choice when decided my husband was worth more than 20 years of friendship. She started crying. I never meant for this to happen. Have to believe me. I don't have to believe anything anymore. That's the thing about betrayal this complete, it frees from caring about the other person's feelings. I collected my things while she sobbed in her kitchen. The house felt contaminated now, knowing Mark had been here, knowing they'd probably laughed about how clueless I was. I'm moving, she said as I headed for the door. Good. I can't stay here, not with everyone knowing, not with hating me. I don't, Sarah, requires caring, and I don't care about at all anymore, or nothing to me. She flinched like I'd slapped her. That's worse than, isn't it? I said, being nothing. I left her crying in her doorway and drove home to find Mark's car in my driveway again. This time he wasn't alone. His lawyer was with him. Jen, the lawyer said as I approached my front door. We need to discuss the division of assets and temporary living arrangements. My lawyer will call lawyer. There's no need for this to get, Mark said. We can work this out like adults. Adults don't cheat on their spouses with their best friends. Adults also don't change locks and freeze accounts without discussion. I'd frozen our accounts that morning. Every penny we'd saved together. Every dollar of our shared, locked away where he couldn't touch it. Should have thought about financial security before decided to betray me. His lawyer was taking notes. Everything I said would probably be used against me later, painted as vindictive or unreasonable. I didn't care anymore. I just want what's fair, Mark said. Fair would be getting nothing. Fair would be having to explain to every future girlfriend why last marriage ended. Fair would be everyone knowing exactly what kind of man are. Or being vindictive. I'm being protective. There's a difference. I went inside and left them standing in my driveway. Through the window, I watched them have a heated discussion before finally driving away. That night I called my sister. How are holding? She asked. Everyone wants me to forgive him. Everyone's in bind. It was the first thing anyone had said that made sense. Even Mom thinks I should try counseling. Mom's never been cheated on. She doesn't understand that some betrayals are unforgivable. Is that what this is? Jen, he didn't just cheat, he cheated with Sarah, maid of honor, the woman trusted with everything. That's not a mistake. That's a calculated destruction of everything sacred in point finally. Someone who understood. Am I being too harsh? Or being too easy on him? That night I made a decision. I was gonna stop caring what anyone else thought. Stop trying to be the bigger person. Stop protecting Mark's reputation or Sarah's feelings. I was going to choose for the first time in years. And if that made me the villain in their story, so be it. The divorce was finalized on a rainy Thursday in October. 6 months after that Tuesday that destroyed everything. 6 months of lawyers and mediation and Mark's increasingly desperate attempts to paint me as the unreasonable one. I kept the house. I kept my dignity. I kept the knowledge that I'd chosen self-respect over social pressure. But I lost everything else. The mutual friends picked sides and most of them picked Mark and Sarah. Apparently, love conquers all, and I was the bitter ex-wife who couldn't forgive a simple mistake. Simple mistake. Even now, 8 months later, those words make my boil. Sarah moved to Portland 2 weeks after the divorce was final. She couldn't handle the judgment, she said. Couldn't handle being known as the woman who destroyed her best friend's marriage. Mark moved in with his brother temporarily, then got his own apartment downtown. He tried dating for a while, but word gets around in small towns. Women started avoiding him once they learned his story. Good. I thought I'd feel vindicated watching his social crumble. Instead, I just felt empty. The hardest part wasn't losing Mark or Sarah. The hardest part was losing the version of who believed in forever. I used to be the friend who gave relationship advice. The woman who believed love could overcome anything. The wife who thought marriage was sacred and unbreakable. Now I'm the cautionary tale other women whisper about at coffee shops. Did hear about Jen Morrison. Caught her husband with her best friend. Divorced him immediately. Wouldn't even try counseling. Some of them admire my strength. Others think I was too quick to give. They don't understand that there was nothing left to for. I started therapy 3 months after the divorce. Dr. Martinez is patient with my trust issues, my hypervigilance, my inability to believe anyone completely ever again. Experienced a compound betrayal, she explained during one session. Not just infidelity, but betrayal by closest friend and the conspiracy of silence around it. That changes how brain processes relationships, changes. Such a clinical word for the way I now scrutinize every friendship for signs of deception. The way I assume people are lying until proven otherwise. The way I've built walls so high that even my sister struggles to reach me sometimes. I went on exactly 3 dates in the 8 months after my divorce. The first man, David, was kind and patient. He listened when I told him about Mark and Sarah, nodded sympathetically, said all the right things. On our 4th date, he mentioned he was technically still married but separated. I walked out of the restaurant. The second man, James, seemed perfect. Divorced for 2 years, honest about his past, emotionally available. We had chemistry, easy conversation, shared interests. Then I found out he'd been texting his ex-wife about our dates, asking for her opinion about whether I was relationship material. I blocked his number. The third man, Michael, was upfront about everything. Recently divorced, no kids, heard looking for something real. We had coffee and he was charming and funny and genuine. I went home and cried for 2 hours because I couldn't bring to trust him. That's what betrayal like mine does to. It doesn't just end one relationship, it sabotages every relationship that comes after. I see Mark sometimes around town. He looks older, grayer. The cocky confidence he used to carry has been replaced by something diminished. Last month I ran into him at the grocery store. He was alone, buying frozen dinners, and the sight of him should have made me angry or sad or something. Instead I felt nothing. Jen, he said, approaching my cart. How are? Fine. Look good. Happy. I wasn't happy. I was surviving. There's a difference. How's Sarah? I asked cause I'm apparently a masochist. His face fell. We broke. 3 months ago. Of course they did. Relationships built on betrayal survive the guilt and judgment that follows. I'm sorry I lied. I considered the question. Was I sorry that his great love affair had crashed and burned? That he'd lost his wife and his girlfriend and ended with nothing? No, I said finally. I'm not sorry at all. He nodded like he'd expected that answer. I know he'll never forgive me, he said. But I want to know that losing was the biggest mistake of my. It wasn't a mistake, Mark. It was a choice. Chose Sarah over me every day for months, chose lies over honesty, chose betrayal over loyalty. Those weren't mistakes. They were decisions. I know that now. Maybe next wife will benefit from that knowledge. I walked away from him standing there in the cereal aisle, and I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Peace, not happiness, not joy, but peace. The acceptance that some things can't be fixed or forgotten or forgiven. The understanding that choosing isn't selfish when everyone else has chosen themselves first. I sold the house last month. Too many memories, too many ghosts in every room. I bought a small condo across town and started over completely. New furniture, new routines. New. People ask if I'm dating, if I want to get married again, if I plan to have children. They ask like these things are inevitable. Like healing means returning to exactly who I was before. But I'm not who I was before. That woman was naive and trusting and believed that love was enough to protect her from harm. This woman knows better. I might date again someday. I might even fall in love. But I'll never again build my entire identity around being someone's wife. I'll never again trust completely without verification. I'll never again ignore red flags because I want so badly to believe in forever. Some people call that cynical. I call it self-preservation. My sister asked me last week if I regret divorcing Mark so quickly. If I wonder what would have happened if I'd tried counseling, given him a second chance, worked through the betrayal. The answer is simple no. Because here's what I learned from losing everything. Can't rebuild trust when the foundation was constructed on lies. Can't heal from betrayal while still living with betrayer. Can't save a marriage when spouse chose someone else for months and only came back to because they got caught. Most importantly, can't love someone who fundamentally doesn't respect. Mark didn't respect me when he started the affair. He didn't respect me when he continued it for months. He didn't respect me when he got caught and tried to minimize it. And he didn't respect me when he spent 6 months trying to convince everyone that I was unreasonable for refusing to forgive the unforgivable. Choosing to divorce him wasn't giving on love. It was refusing to accept a counterfeit version of it. Sarah sent me a letter 2 months ago. A long, rambling apology full of excuses and explanations and requests for forgiveness. She's in therapy now, she wrote. She understands how much she wants to make amends. I burned the letter without finishing it. Some betrayals are too deep for apologies. Some friendships are too broken for repair. Some wounds are meant to scar over and serve as permanent reminders of what happens when trust the wrong people. I don't Sarah anymore. Requires energy I'm not willing to spend on her. But I don't forgive her either. Forgiveness requires her to deserve it, and she hasn't earned that right. People say forgiveness is for, not for them. That holding on to anger only hurts. But there's a difference between anger and boundaries. I'm not angry anymore. I'm just done. Done with people who think betrayal can be overcome with enough effort. Done with friends who choose convenience over loyalty. Done with family members who prioritize keeping the peace over supporting the wronged party. Most of all, I'm done with the version of who would have stayed. Tonight, I'm sitting in my new living room, drinking and writing this story. Tomorrow, I start a new job in a new city. A fresh beginning, a place where no one knows about Mark or Sarah or the spectacular failure of my marriage. I'm 34 years old. I have no husband, no children, no best friend. On paper, my looks like a series of losses. Heard. But I have something I didn't have a year ago, the unshakable knowledge that I will never again accept less than I deserve. And maybe that's not the happy ending everyone wanted for me. But it's the ending I chose. The woman who walked in on her husband and best friend that Tuesday afternoon was destroyed by their betrayal. The woman writing this story was forged by her response to it.